All right, it is 5:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call to order. I will now call to order the December 21st, 2023 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. That's the first thing on the agenda. And the second thing is a roll call. Will the recorder please take roll call?
Commissioner Herman.
Present.
Commissioner Fuller. Here. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Morris. Here. Commissioner Potts. Here. Commissioner Strauss.
Here.
Commissioner Strong.
Here.
And Commissioner Zimmerman and Commissioner Denbrook are absent. We have quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Next on the agenda is our public comment. The commission will now hear testimony from the public concerning items not on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Alrighty, seeing none, we will now consider the approval of minutes from the last meeting, which is dated November 16th, 2023. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
That was Commissioner Curtin? Inman. Okay, perfect. And can I hear a second?
I will second.
All right, perfect. Motion by Commissioner Inman and seconded by Commissioner Fuller. Do we have any changes that we'd like to make? All right. Seeing no comments for change, I will go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say yay. Aye. And anyone who does not approve? All right, perfect. The minutes are approved. All righty, next on the agenda is public hearings, but we don't have any public hearings. We'll move on to action items. The first thing up is the Scan Heritage Neighborhood designation. And I believe we have a staff presentation. Okay, perfect.
Good evening, Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. So tonight you're going to be considering a request by the Scan Neighborhood Association to be recognized as a Salem Heritage Neighborhood. So since this is a new program for some of you, I'm going to give a brief overview of the program and how it relates to our historic preservation plan and specific goals related to that, and also share some of the cool projects we've done with some of our former neighborhood associations. So for those of you that were involved in our historic preservation plan, Commissioner Strong, I think, and Juliana as well. Kirsten, I think you were also there. Yeah, which was adopted in 2020. We identified as our first goal a goal to improve public outreach and community education with a specific strategy to educate neighborhoods within the Salem Heritage Neighborhood Program. And really, one of the reasons for this is we wanted to create a good solid foundation around understanding the significance of a neighborhood's history before really even introducing any kind of regulation. And so I have a graphic I love, which kind of illustrates that. It's what I call the preservation pyramid. And it was something I was taught in school. So really what you can see here is we've got some building blocks. And these are some of the tools that we use in preservation relating to education. On the ground survey, which reconnaissance level survey, which doesn't mean asking people stuff. It means looking at the building fabric and identifying what you have. And then doing some outreach to the community, and that does involve helping folks understand about their history, but also learning from the community about what their history is. And then recognition, which is really where the Heritage Neighborhood program is it's a recognition, not a true designation with any regulation associated with it, but it allows us to then work with a neighborhood to more directly achieve some of these things. So this also shows how this all kind of works in conjunction with what we do here at the Landmarks Commission. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, the city of Salem has a number of recognized neighborhood associations. This Heritage Neighborhood Program was established in 2014 by City Council. I'll talk a little bit more about what we did with the other neighborhoods, but our first neighborhood association we worked with was the Grant Neighborhood Association, and we identified several projects that we did with them, signage and sign toppers and interpretation. We developed calendars and brochures and guidebooks, and in the past we've even worked on walking tours with markers. So the goal really being projects that work to help the community understand and celebrate their history. So here's some specific examples from the Grant neighborhood, which was all the way back, I can't believe it, in 2015. So you can see the front cover of our architectural guidebook, the calendar that we worked with them to create, and then the sign toppers. And what's cool, we're still continuing to work with them, even though they're not our latest neighborhood, heritage neighborhood. So just earlier this year, the neighborhood association wanted to install some additional sign toppers, and you can see that back there at the bottom of the screen. We helped them do that. And then our second neighborhood association was the Cessna Neighborhood Association, which we worked with them in 2017, and we did a calendar with them. Again, that was really fun. We also did an architectural handbook, and something that we really worked hard with them was doing a survey, reconnaissance level survey. It was a pretty big neighborhood, and we used some new technology. It was really amazing to be able to use our cell phones to be able to access our ArcGIS system to take pictures and document the condition and eligibility of our resources. And you can see here we also developed some historic maps as well. Our most recent heritage neighborhood was the Highland neighborhood. So we did some of the similar projects with them. They are now revising their handbook. I won't call it an architectural guidebook because they're turning it into something else a little bit more catered to what they need for their neighborhood, which is cool. We also did the RLS survey and sign toppers with them. So getting into the details of the SCAN Neighborhood Association request. So we actually have criteria. So to be eligible, the neighborhood association has to be recognized by the city of Salem, and of course in this case, SCAN is a recognized neighborhood association, and they were established in 1973. Secondly, at least 50% of the resources within the boundary that they would like to have recognized have to be at least 50 years old or older. And based on our initial pool of data from ArcGIS about the dates, construction dates, 73% are 50 years old or older. Part of what we'll do as part of this process is verify and confirm the accuracy of those dates, because as you may know, the assessor's dates aren't right. And initially, they'll talk to you all about this in more detail in just a minute, but they've identified some key projects that they're interested in. As you know, the Gaiety Hill Bushes Pasture Park National Register District is within this neighborhood association. So that will be excluded from the work that we do regarding survey, but we could include it for any projects related to education and outreach. So the Landmarks Commission has several alternatives This is an action item, so you could, after listening to their testimony tonight, you could request additional information and don't do anything this evening and continue it to next month. Or you could go ahead and vote to designate it as our next Heritage Neighborhood Association, or you could determine that the criteria haven't been met. So that concludes my staff report for now. And unless there's any questions, I will stop sharing and representatives from the association.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Alrighty, we can go ahead and have the representative from the neighborhood association. If you could please state your name and address for the record, that would be lovely.
Good evening, commissioners. My voice seems to be going into hiding. For the record, I'm Victor Godier. I'm the president of the South Central Association of Neighbors, otherwise known as SCAN. And I live at 396 Washington Street South in Salem. I'm here with Adam West, SCAN's vice president. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on designation of SCAN as a heritage neighborhood. Our request for designation came out of a long running discussion that came out of the designation of mixed use zones along Commercial Street South and the city council's proposal to rescind the overlay zones within SCAN that had prevented the residential neighborhood from encroaching commercial development for many years. Some parts of our neighborhood are well documented. Historic assets are well documented. For instance, the Bush Park itself, Bush National Park itself, and the Gaiety Hill Bush Park residential district. Other parts of SCAN are less well documented, yet contain historic residences, pieces of historic infrastructure, like the Connie McCullough designed bridge over the creek on Church Street, and other bits of interesting history, like the abandoned proposal for a streetcar line that went up Electric Avenue, and how various parts of the neighborhood were developed and became part of the city. The work done for the Heritage Neighborhood designation will go toward a better understanding of how the SCAN neighborhood came to be as it is today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam West, who has more detail to speak to. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, city staff and members of the commission. Hi, I'm Adam West, as Victor mentioned. I'm a resident of Ward 7. I actually work full-time as an historic preservation specialist, and I also happen to be the vice chair of the SCAN Neighborhood Association. I'm very happy to appear before you all today to urge you to move forward with the designation of SCAN as a heritage neighborhood. In my view, this designation simply makes sense. Travel Salem tells us that Salem is the most Oregon part of Oregon. And if that's true, which I believe that it is, I would go further to suggest that SCAN might be the most Salem part of Salem, particularly when we consider our city's historic resources. The SCAN neighborhood is home to 3 of our most beloved house of art museums. The Oregon Governor's House sits within our boundaries, and we share responsibility with the historic Pioneer Cemetery that forms another boundary. One of Salem's historic districts is fully within the SCAN neighborhood, and residents are working hard to nominate a second historic district where resources have previously been eligible. But importantly, it's not simply the obvious that makes SCAN an excellent candidate for designation as a heritage neighborhood. SCAN is home to a wealth of diversity, and we're excited to have the opportunity to highlight the history of people and places that have all too often been overlooked. While many are already aware of the homes of bridge engineer Connie McCullough or former Governor Mark Hatfield, the understated and underevaluated architecture of our neighborhood tells stories of our community as well. We're particularly excited to explore the history of development near the railroad main line at 12th and 13th Streets, and to expand interpretation of critical events and places in Indigenous history, perhaps in Bush Park and the Salem Health campus. The support of the Heritage Neighborhoods program will provide tremendous assistance to my hardworking SCAN colleagues who are already working tirelessly to promote and preserve the rich history of our neighborhood, while also bringing it into the future. We have not yet formalized what educational project we want to complete with your support, but the process of surveying our historic resources will enable us to create and champion principles of preservation in the heart of our community for years to come. I want to thank you all very much again for your consideration, and I'm looking forward to receiving the support of this commission. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I have a question actually. I see that you have the intent to do an intensive level survey after the reconnaissance level survey, and I'm wondering if you're envisioning that a whole neighborhood or kind of based off what you find in the RLS?
That is an excellent question. There's no short answer. I would say based on what is uncovered in the RLS, that will guide the direction. I know our, am I not, sorry, so I'm not lying anymore. Based on the RLS, I would say that will guide our direction. I know our Parks and Gardens Committee Chair really would love to see the entirety of the neighborhood survey. I understand the magnitude of that process. Believe me, as someone who has done that as a paid position before, I will not be volunteering to do that personally by myself. Maybe we'll get there. I think there's a lot of value in doing it for the entire neighborhood. I absolutely understand the challenges in taking on that task for a neighborhood of our size. But I think that we would cover a wealth of resources and history for the view of the ILS for the entire neighborhood.
Great. And you say that you do have some volunteers who are kind of already on board to help with some of these processes.
Absolutely. I'm really consistently proud of the engagement that we have in our neighborhood. We have a great people who are very familiar with our neighborhood association and great connections to the rest of the neighborhood. So we are able to get good turnout almost always. And I think that this would be a great opportunity to even further engage and create some new awareness of what our neighborhood association is doing. So I don't envision having any problem finding volunteers in our neighborhood to help would be formalize the thing.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a hand up here. It's me.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. So the whole district would be designated as
The home of the SCAN neighborhood, yes,
as a historic,
as a heritage neighborhood.
as a heritage neighborhood. Okay, so it's not going to be nominated as a historic district?
No,
Okay.
not this, not the whole neighborhood, not this time. There are other parts of our neighborhood that we hope to eventually do that for. At this point, it's just the city's heritage neighborhood program.
Right, so is only the Gady Hill Bushes Pasture Park,
And existing structures.
okay, but there are individually listed historic resources within, okay.
That's correct.
So right now, what protections does this area have, if any, for historic preservation? Is it only individual structures that are protected?
Well, essentially, yes, and Kimberly can certainly tell you more about that. Based on the city's preservation program, which is where, as you know, the two theist preservation guidelines come from. That's how I would say that. Individually registered buildings have some additional criteria that they follow and protections that they fall under. And the historic district certainly has some of the similar protections, and there's concern that over time there's been encroachments on that existing historic district and on other potential eligible resources including potential districts. And so we're working hard to ensure that importantly, it's really important to say that historic preservation is not stonewall development. We're not trying to stop good things from happening in our community. We're working hard to make sure that our resources from the past are able to be highlighted and maybe used, the champion for what they are, while we work to ensure that new development, housing, whatever the case may be, doesn't incidentally damage our historic resources inadvertently, basically. Does that make sense?
Thank you, yes. I believe this issue came up when we were doing revising the plan, actually, in that neighborhood. So I just wanted to
Yeah, there's a lot to it, so I'm happy to keep talking more about that, because it's complicated, but.
That helps, thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
All right, great. Any other questions? Okay, then I think I could entertain a motion and we can discuss it.
I'm excited to move that we designate the South Central Association of Neighbors as a Salem Heritage Neighborhood.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Ponce moves that we find the Scan neighborhood designated for the Heritage Neighborhood Program, and that is seconded by Morris. Oh, I'm so sorry. Commissioner Morris moves that we designate the Scan neighborhood as a Heritage Neighborhood, and that was seconded by Commissioner Inman. I hope. Right. Your motion.
So as a resident of Scan for over 25 years, just recently left Scan from Candelaria neighborhood, still own properties in Scan. I consider it, I'm not kind of shocked that it's not a Salem Heritage neighborhood already, because I agree, I think it's probably one of the most, it's a very Salem central neighborhood. It's incredibly diverse. It has kind of everything that you could want in a neighborhood. Yeah, I think this is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to support this nomination as well. I also live in Scan actually, so I am excited to see some more education about the really beautiful homes that we have in the neighborhood, and highlight some of the more interesting areas of the neighborhood as well. You mentioned in your testimony about the sort of like cool sort of mid-century commercial district that you have along 12th Street, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about that. I think it's a pretty interesting pocket of Salem history. All right, great. Well, if there are no other comments, then I think we could go ahead and go to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say yay. Aye. And all not in favor, please say nay. All right, sounds like the motion passes.
I just want to follow up. While this is fresh, next month we'll be talking about our work plan. So we'll need to have an HLC member as a liaison to the subcommittee that Scan will be establishing. So just wanted to throw that.
Perfect. We'll definitely be thinking about that. Okay, perfect. Well, then we can go ahead and move on. It looks like our next agenda item is discussion items. And we've got the Englewood Park designation. Great.
Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit more about Englewood Park. My
And
name
if
is
you could
Lynn.
state your name and.
Oh, that's what I was just saying to you. My name is Lynn Takata. I'm a resident of Ward 1. And I'm representing Northeast Neighbors Neighborhood Association, otherwise known as NET. So we're here to request assistance with an application for Englewood Park to be considered as a local historic landmark. The park was the first park purchased by the city of Salem in 1926, and it's a treasure in our neighborhood. It includes Lord and Schreiber's designs from drawings that Edith Schreiber did in 1940 and 1941. Those that were implemented in the park, including a network of pathways, circular clearings cut into the dense forest to let light into the park, a wading pool, and supposed to be sorry about that. And the park also hosts many significant trees that are protected by the city of Salem. So the slide on the right shows some of the circles that are put into the park, which can be seen when you're in the park, and they do let light in. They were controversial when Lord and Schreiber did them, but they went forward with the design and council on it. It's a treasure within this city of Salem, having historic trees, many of which predate the pioneers at over 225 years old. The park also is unique because 90% of the trees are native, and it's the only park in the city that has native plants and trees. There, just as a very small handful of native items, and there's also plants that have not been propagated, but they are existing representing. So they're tubers, and now that we've worked really hard not to use herbicides in the park, the native plants are coming back, as well as the establishment. So the neighborhood association, this is the neighborhood association established the Englewood Forest Festival to share information about the park history and to educate people, because when I moved to the Englewood, people didn't understand the uniqueness of the park and why it was special. So we try to have like a special festival. These are some of our historic trees that are protected in the city of Salem. And we did learn that you can't really judge the age of the tree by its diameter. So that was something that was very informational to us, because with the ice storm and all the trees that did fall, we found that some trees that did not appear to be significant over 200 years old. So about 8 years ago, there was a proposal to swap a significant part of the park with the Salem Preserve School District. 4 of us testified at City Council to protect the park. We did not think we would have a chance of keeping that land within the park, and to our surprise, we were successful. 1 of 2 neighbors that testified and were successful in preserving the park. Recently, there's been a lot of interest in, not a lot, but most of the neighbors around the park just adore the park. But every so often somebody wants a cyclone fence or a dog park or something that is completely not consistent with the park itself. So we're hoping that, as we've seen many historic landscapes destroyed, we believe that this historic park is worthy of protection and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? Alrighty, so this is a discussion item. Is there a presentation from staff or, okay, great. Since this is a discussion item, we don't have to technically vote on anything, but I think it would be great if we could maybe make a motion on whether we'd like to support this request. Vote on it. That sounds good to the commissioners.
Is that we're beginning it then? Okay, great. Well, then I definitely make a motion to support this request.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We have a second?
Second.
Alrighty, Commissioner Fuller votes to support the request, and that's seconded by Commissioner Inman. To your motion.
Right. So I live very close to this property. I'm in Roberta's Acres as well, and I can say that this park is an absolute gem in its community. It's a place not just for the human residents of it, but also for the plants and the animals. It's a place for people of all ages and all economic backgrounds. Really is kind of a little like beating heart of community here. And I'm, living in the neighborhood, I'm also aware of the folks who are concerned about things like security or questions of folks being there that they don't believe need to be there. And I think that that's counter to the notion of what this park is for, why it exists, what it represents to us in this community. And so anything that we can do to help protect it and keep it as a historic property, and also as a property that gets wide and active use by people who don't need to pay anything to get the value from this piece of land. It's beautiful, and we should do everything we can to keep it safe.
Any other comments? Commissioner Inman?
I think this is an important part of the cultural landscape of Salem that we really need to both appreciate and preserve. And this kind of designation can help prevent erosion of that landscape. So I'm very supportive.
Any other comments?
I'll speak to it in a similar manner. It's one of the most unique parks. When I first moved here years ago, over 30 years ago, I visited Eaglewood and was just staggered by this sort of unusual quality. Because parks that have natural trees that are in an urban setting, you know, they're of that scale and that age, they didn't exist in the Midwest. So it was sort of a staggering park to walk into and be right in the middle of the neighborhood. So I really do feel like, and I think the other component to it is its visibility outside of the park. From around the city, it is distinct. You can see it. I always equate it in my mind to sort of a Mount Tabor of Salem, because you can see that grove from almost anywhere in the city once you get up to a certain height. So I definitely think we should do everything we can to help protect.
Commissioner Moss?
So I have certain issues. It's a gym, it's mentioned for every reason. And it also brings for me to investigators question. Why this survived? It's almost a gym, it's a gym. When you trace back that history of the state hospital, so developed in houses that in that area supported it begins to tell a story past of that period. So for those reasons, I absolutely support.
Great, yeah, I think you're kind of hinting at the possibility of maybe wider than just the park over there. That neighborhood is really beautiful, I think. I'm also fully in support of this endeavor. It always surprises me when it's not already a local. I'm like, isn't that listed? And the answer is no, and I'm like, oh, we should get that figured out. So I'm really happy we've got some interest from the community in doing that. I think it's gonna be really great. Okay, great. I think if there's no other comments, we can go ahead and vote on our support for this. And then maybe we've got just a few logistical questions for staff after we formally support. Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and call a vote. All those in favor of supporting the effort to nominate Eagle Park to the local register, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, perfect. Sounds like it was unanimous. So we are formally in support of listing the park in the local register. I think for staff, are there logistical needs? What does it look like moving forward to actually get this on the register?
Sorry, very similar to how we handled the criterion schoolhouse request. So this will add it to our work plan for the Landmarks Commission to consider next month. But also, we'll be reaching out to you then to see if you have any researchers or any volunteers that can help. I know you mentioned you were going to make a journey down to June, is that right, to the Ninth Library? So we envision it as a collaborative effort, and certainly we'll identify some key volunteers to help with the research and the writing, and then when it's ready, then the Landmarks Commission will initiate the nomination and we'll help you through that process.
All right, perfect. Well, then we will wait to hear more when we do our plan next month. That sounds great. All right, I think then we can go ahead and move on to our next discussion item, which is design standards for security gates and fences downtown. And I'm assuming we've got a presentation from the staff.
I'm Kimberly Fitzgerald, District Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. So this discussion topic has grown out of an issue that has been going on for a little while, but has really come to the forefront relatively recently. So a number of our historic property owners and tenants in our downtown have been experiencing challenges at their storefronts, at their entries under their awnings, both with security, for security issues, not associated with homeless folks, but also with homeless folks needing to take shelter in bad weather and that sort of thing. So they're wanting to utilize tools like security gates and fencing to help secure their storefronts. So I'm bringing this to you tonight after we had a hearing last month. That was the one HIS 23-22, 170 Liberty Street Northeast, which you can see here. The security gate and fence that was a compliance case that the owner was asking for retroactive approval, and that was denied. And then there's on the left side of your screen, there was a previous case that we heard this summer, HIS 2305 at 456 Court, and that one was approved. The biggest difference between the two, the one that was approved was retractable, and you could see through it. It has not been installed yet. I'm going to go take a picture, hoping to see it down, but it was not installed yet. And since this picture was taken, the fence and gate at 170 has been removed. So here's a few pictures of existing installed gates, which are exclusively across doorways or access ways to stairs. So nothing as broad as what's been requested by the commission previously. But you can see pretty typical materials, metal, and wrought iron appearing, and you can see. I did reach out through 2 different listservs to ask if anybody else was experiencing these kinds of challenges and if they had examples of design standards that they could share. There's a Oregon specific listserv for historic preservation staff like me, and I got a lot of responses like Heidi's here from Ben. Oh no, we're not experiencing that, but we might. So let us know what you decide. We did hear from the city of Portland, and they haven't got a broad design standard, but they did share some design standards, which I'll share with you in just a second, related to a specific district, their Chinatown. And then I did hear from a gentleman from Minneapolis, I think, who's staring at you, who did share some different ideas as well. But what was interesting, I didn't share all the responses I got, but weather seems to play an important role. So in the colder cities and states, they don't have this problem during the winter months. They do in the summer months, which is, I guess, logical. So these are the guidelines from the city of Portland, and you can see a picture of a security gate across a storefront that was approved. They have general guidelines which minimize the visual impact of the features. They support movable gates or roll down doors. Again, by insetting the features into the storefront bay opening like you can see here. And then New York seems to have the most substantive standards, which makes sense, I guess, because they've been around for so long and certainly have the kind of security issues that we're experiencing here. And you can see they've got, just like we do, their standards organized by materials and design. And I really liked their illustrated drawings, which not only show what the appearance looks like after it's installed, but also the kind of detail and profile. So you can see what is acceptable. I don't know if you can read it there, but it is in your packets as well. So essentially they have materials that are acceptable based on the period of significance. And also they support any design similar to the city of Portland, where the security gate is mounted on the interior of the storefront, and that the housing is recessed, so it's not easily visible, and no character defining features are adversely affected. So what I've done, sorry for all the red, but these are our existing standards that I know you grappled with last month. With some proposed language for you to start, right? So I have it organized by materials and design. And I'll just read to you both sections. So under materials, a new recommended section standard C, new security fencing or gates materials must, one, be compatible with the character of the building's period and style, and two, be metal or another traditional material available during a period of significance for the historic district, which in this case ends in 1950 for downtown. And then under design, a new standard D, new security fencing gates must, one, be retractable or movable, and two, not inhibit access to the storefront alcoves during normal business operating hours, and three, not be site obscuring, and four, be attached to the storefront without adversely impacting or obscuring character defining features of the stores. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave that up and turn it over to you guys then to discuss and give us direction.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I think maybe to organize our discussion about these potential criteria, maybe it'd be useful for us to take it materials and then take it design, so we can discuss the potential language for materials first, and then we can do the design later. And I think it would probably be useful for us to maybe vote on it as well. So maybe we could go ahead and do a motion to whatever motion you guys want to do, and then we can discuss it, and we'll do that first, and we should if that sounds good to everybody. So I'll go ahead and take a motion for the new materials language, and then we can discuss it.
I move that we adopt the language provided by staff under section 230.040, the addition of criteria C.
May I have a second?
Second.
Alrighty, Commissioner Morris moves to adopt the language suggested by staff, and that is seconded by Commissioner Inman. Go ahead and do your motion.
Well, so I missed the last meeting where this came up, and so I'm a little curious how this would have addressed that. So as part of our discussion, I am interested in hearing other commissioners speak to whether this would have covered that specific instance. But I mean, I think this seems like pretty low hanging fruit. This is really just giving us some very consistent guidelines that we already apply to other components, and just directly addressing security fencing and gates. And I think that just is, I mean, I think again, it's fairly common sense. It leaves enough latitude for us to make that subjective determination if it's actually compatible.
Yeah, and I think maybe to summarize a little bit of our discussion from the last meeting, one of the issues we have, and maybe the better place to discuss this was under the design criteria, because I think the materials one seems pretty straightforward. But just to sort of go back to our meeting last time, there was some concern about especially the gate not closing all the way when it was open, so you could still see the gate pretty prominently even when it was open, and so that was something we kind of discussed. And there was some comments from the community about the gate being closed a lot of the time, so that was a couple of the concerns that came up. I don't know if there were too many concerns about material in particular, so I think if anybody else remembers something differently, then I'd be happy. Commissioner Fuller.
I think the bit that we had for material on the last thing we reviewed was that we also found that the material shows included also not just the metal fence, but the paint art as well, and that the material didn't exactly fit the, the period of significance for the building, the style of the fence, and also that the color and size of it we found to be of questionable compatibility with the character of the building. If we see that picture of the 170 Persian Street, like the yellowness, like the cakey yellowness of the fence was its own thing. So I think there's no way to reroute that.
Yeah, any other discussion about any language we'd like to see included in this, or any change of language we'd like to see? Commissioner Hans?
So I actually missed last month's meeting, and just wondering that if there's a gauge on how many requests.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have an active case that we're expecting to come to commission next month, and I just got another call today for so
yeah,
So I think this started with a motion, but we're really in a work session, so I don't really need a motion necessarily. I think the motion was to approve, so I just make sure there's no confusion. You're not approving any code amendments tonight, which is we to direct Kimberly to initiate a code amendment, which is at least a 4 to 6 month process that requires a public hearing here and at city council. So I don't want to give the impression that if you do something tonight, the next case that comes before you would, these standards would apply to them. Once they get in the door before the code change, you can't change the rules on the midstream, so I just want to make sure that's clear. Thank you.
yeah. I think on this particular part, the material part, I don't have any super big concerns about the language being presented. I think we're covering the issue of whether it fits with the character of the building. I think that's the most important part. And I feel like it'd be hard to do offensive material within that all. I guess we'll see. People surprised me before. So. Okay, great. Are there any other questions or suggestions for the language on this piece, or any further direction for staff? You can take kind of just a casual vote, but yes, we're in support of the changes to the materials. Okay, great. All right, then we'll go ahead and vote on our first motion, which was that we support the addition of the C section suggested by staff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So it looks like we're all generally in favor of the material changes. So that's great, that's easy. The next one that I'd like to discuss is the potential changes to the design criteria. So I think same sort of thing, we can discuss the language and decide if we've got any suggestions for staff, or if we'd like to change the language, or what we'd like to see.
I'll make a motion. I move to to approve and amend some of this language in the bottom part, specifically looking to define what we mean by the resource. Does that mean the individual structure at the very last point of it? Does that mean the individual structure, or does that mean the historic district?
Okay, so when you say that again, what's your motion?
I move to amend and clarify the language on item number 4 of section D, so that we can better identify what the resource means in that thing, whether it's an individual building or whether it is the district itself.
Okay, perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we've got a motion from Commissioner Fuller, seconded by Commissioner Inman, to discuss item 4, specifically what we mean by the resource. If you'd like to.
A lot of our discussion last session focused on not just the effect that fencing had on the building we were looking at, but the effect that fencing had on the greater downtown historic district. I would think that clarifying that section 4 to me to say that we attach to the storefront that adversely or impact the character defining features of the historic resource and its corresponding historic district would be more clarifying and would give us more things to grab onto.
Okay. Does staff have any, like logistical concerns about adding that kind of language?
No, just a clarification, we do have a definition section in SRC 230 where we do define historic resource, but there's no problem at all. In fact, it does help to add the language historic resource and the surrounding historic district.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any other discussion on that particular request to add historic district? Okay, I think then we can take a vote on that particular piece, though I expect we might have more items to discuss. So everyone in favor of that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So we'd like to go ahead and add to the resource specifying both the historic resource and the downtown district to be more specific. Are there other language considerations that we'd like to talk about tonight? I think I had just a couple of questions before maybe we get into any further changes. On item B, must not inhibit access to storefront alcoves during normal business operating hours. Are we intending that to be like general business operating hours for all businesses, or is it specific to that building? I guess, do we want them to be open just kind of generally during the day, or only when that specific business is open?
Well, I'm looking at both Fred and Lisa, but I was thinking about it in terms of the specific business. I was responding to the concerns from the last hearing. I don't think we can mandate when they must be open, so that's my take.
Okay.
So with that in mind, if someone just has a space that they're using for storage, it's never open for business.
No, I would look, so my understanding of the central business district
Is
and the
those business
zoning
hours.
is that you're not allowed to have a storage. Well, you tell me, please.
Yeah, storage is not a approved use in the CV zone on the ground. So now does that stop people from, as it turns out, not ever opening their business? It turns out, it's an enforcement case. I mean, you could define specific hours when you want to say the gates needs to be open, whether or not the business is open. I think because the concern was that if they're only open one day a week, do you want the gate closed all day, every day, the rest of the week? I guess that's something.
Is that something that we could regulate?
Yeah, you can regulate. No, I mean, we regulate hours of businesses through conditional use permits is. And how it is, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Kerman?
And I'm assuming, or I'd like to assume that, since this is already kind of regulating the business hours, that there's language or something that's, deals with if there's something out of the normal that causes them to not have their business open during normal business hours, like weather impacts or something. That's not something we're gonna be putting them on the hook for, like, oh, I mean, you're not open today, but you normally are, so you have to get open. And it sounds silly, but I just wanna make sure that it's not loopholes.
Sure, if I necessarily want to add a standard that they have to have their gate open during like normal business hours, but I'm not, so I don't know if it's something that we should add, but I do think it's something that we should talk about since it's been a concern that the community has brought to us. I can kind of imagine that it would be difficult to enforce, but maybe it would be nice to have that in the code to enforce if there is issues. So I don't know, I would be happy to hear other people's opinions on that.
I think that I'm on board with you on that. I think that if a business owner says that they want to be open, X number of hours in a day, Wednesday through Monday, but they take Tuesdays, to be the day that they don't work. Like, I don't want to make a rule that says like you have to drive downtown to open the gate on your business on the day that your business isn't operational. I don't think that's something that we need to be messing with, you know. Granted though, that the notion that, just like Lisa was saying, the notion that, you know, there are businesses that are not opening on the time, or in the not using the spaces in the ways that they have contractually agreed to use that space. That's a different thing, and I think that's kind of like different kid and caboodle from what we're doing, you know. So not having access to storefront alcoves during normal business operating hours, I think could honestly stay the same as it is, because it really kind of reads as like the hours that business is keeping anyway, right?
Any other comments? Oh, go ahead. Oh, Commissioner Ponce, you had your hand up earlier, sorry.
I think just so, it's written. I think that it's a step. It's a safety, it's a security, it's a source of public at large. The gates are aesthetic, and trying our best to blend that with historic district for the most part. Not until all the businesses have the single road, will there be any consistency. That will look on its own. Maybe back at that, it's tough to. So, let's see. Context. Accessible.
Commissioner Strong?
I agree, with what Commissioner Ponce said, but I'm also wondering if, this is a question for Lisa, I guess, are there businesses downtown that might, I mean, can you envision any circumstances where this might create a problem? For example, a business that isn't using this space for storage, so it's legal approved use, but they are never open and that gate's always closed. And then it becomes, you know, more of a visual problem. Are there situations where we might be in a future problem that we could avoid with different language?
I mean, potentially writing code is all about the one problem, you know, person. You think, oh, this is a great code, and then somebody does something and like, why doesn't code address that? So yeah, but I'm trying to think of, you know, businesses downtown. I think that you generally, if they're operating, there's somebody in there, and they open and have regular hours, and it's, you know, it's not a problem. There have been people that own property downtown that, you know, keep it vacant for a long time, so there's no business. Eventually, those people could put in gates and just say, well, it's for lease, it's vacant. Looking at that situation. It's also something we could bring back, you know, we could go look at and bring back when we come to the hearing. We could do more research. Something we could do is talk to the Downtown Advisory Board about their thoughts on hours of gates, because they are tasked with dispersing the urban renewal money downtown, and so they've been giving grant money for security features. That many things that have come here for security have come from money that they've been giving out, so they want to, you know, share their thoughts about this with the commission, and you can have that information at your hearing. So we could do that.
Commissioner Inman?
Yes, it seems that this may be more a consideration for the conditional use permit than for the historic district guidelines, because this really is a use and time issue, you know, hours of operation, how it's operated. So it may be that in the way that the city words their conditions on the use permit is where that could be.
Kimberly?
Yeah, if I might just jump in, so one of the things that helps me think about it is the Landmarks Commission does not regulate use. but we do regulate, your job is to regulate design and appearance. And why I think we're struggling is that we had a situation at the last hearing where, and granted it was an enforcement case, so it was a non-authorized use. And it has been challenging to enforce because of our lack of clear code. So I think, the benefit of having some language about having no closed gate during normal business hours relates to appearance. So as what Lisa was mentioning, I think it is justified to consider some standards stating that during the normal business hours of the district, that it doesn't appear as if we've got a bunch of gates and security fences across storefronts that historically have been open. And I believe Commissioner Fuller, like at the last hearing, one of your biggest concerns was the adverse effect of the appearance of that always closed gate and fence, which was never part of the original storefront. So while I agree with you, Commissioner, Min, that it isn't your responsibility to regulate use or condition use, you should be considering regulating appearance. And I know it's not easy, but I do support Lisa's idea about maybe reaching out to the downtown advisory board and maybe getting some additional information.
Yeah. Lisa, do you know if any of the fences specifically have received funding from downtown?
Yes.
The fences have, okay, right, yeah. I think that would be definitely a good thing to do. Okay, great. So I think I'm kind of hearing that we are supportive of the language as is, that we would like to have the gates be open while that specific business is open. Does anyone have any comments about that or disagree?
I think that the thing that the two big concepts that we're kind of looking at right now are the combination of, or the appearance, you know, the aesthetic, and then the use, right? And like, we can't really regulate the use of these buildings, but the thing is that this is an area where appearance and use overlap. And so at the very least, I think we need to make a comment on it and make a statement that by affecting the appearance of these downtown buildings, these commercial buildings, we are affecting public use of these commercial buildings, or the owners. You know, the use of the downtown area, or excuse me, the appearance of the downtown area is more than just its structures. It is the way that people are living and interacting with those spaces. And if we are affecting the appearance of those structures to make the area unusable and unlivable, then we are affecting the appearance of the district as a whole. And I think that we're getting pretty close to the nail on this one. So yeah, I wanted to slide that one in there.
Okay, great. Does that mean you have any suggested changes in the language, or you're kind of happy with at least number B for now?
Yeah, I'm totally happy with item D, section 2,
Yeah.
3, 4 as amended and so on. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Right.
I have one more just question.
Commissioner Morris.
So some of the photos that you showed us, the existing ones, I noticed some of those are like actually on alleyway and stuff. And this doesn't this is so broad scope. Are we saying that if you have a security gate on a dead end alley where you have your trash enclosure, that would have to be open during business hours? Or are we only dealing with private entries?
This is only for storefronts. So for security fencing, we have a different section around like enclosures around trash enclosures. We already have language and standards. I didn't bring that forward today. But you do bring up an interesting point. we are seeing, in fact, we have a new application right now where certain businesses are activating and creating an alley storefront. So in that respect, if it is how we define a storefront, this would apply to that. So if it's the primary entrance of the business, this would apply. But if it's a rear, an alley, like a trash enclosure, we don't, that would not.
It did.
Perfect. Are there more questions or comments? I've got a couple more things I'd like to talk about, but I don't want to.
Just one question, and that is, do we have a definition of storefront? Is that like formally defined in our?
No, but it's on a post-it on my garage to be updated.
Because I guess I was, part of my earlier question was if there are areas that are being used for something that's not retail or regular business hour type businesses, how do we accommodate that and make it so that we have consistent regulation? So, like if somebody has a primary entrance and then they have a bunch of frontage that isn't an entrance.
Yeah, and one of the things again I liked about the New York code is that they clearly define storefront, including a picture of what each of the parts are and how they're regulated. So that's certainly something we could move towards. Like Lisa mentioned, it's a long process, so we can certainly.
Yeah, that kind of brings up a question actually on my part, is if we're going to say the door or the gates need to be open during regular business hours for storefronts, would that apply to doors over like apartment access, at least the second floor? We have a good way to sort of divide those.
Well, and that also brings, I did have a brief discussion with building and safety and fire and certain building code regulations about living spaces that, again, we don't have jurisdiction over. But essentially living spaces need to have easy access in case of a fire. And I'm loosely defining it as easy, but they could have a closed gate like you saw in the pictures, but they have to have a panic bar. And some of those that I pictured did not, they had so there's other issues there, but that would be something we would need to cover.
Okay, so maybe we would need to add something that like open during business hours wouldn't necessarily apply to like second, or I guess I'm not sure how to word that.
No, I think I'm sorry. I think it would be in how we define store. So
Okay,
as long
great.
as we're not including those, the areas that I showed in the pictures, like that would be a storefront, that would
Okay.
be an entry.
Great, cool, sounds good to me. All right, any comments from the commissioners? Okay, great, then I think I have a comment that I'd like to make about item 1, which is be retractable or movable. And I think I might like that to be a little bit more specific and just saying fully retractable or movable. I think it would be great if these fences and or gates were like pretty visually minimal when open, like it would be kind of hard to see them when they were open, to kind of mimic that they weren't there as possible. So I just don't want to get into a situation necessarily where you like can retract it, but maybe there's like a big piece of it that you can always see. So I think if possible, it would be nice to say sort of visually minimal when open or something like that.
I like the addition of fully retractable. Because one of the issues with the previous gate was that there was a fixed portion of it that was never moved, so that it was in effect enclosing that open storefront period.
Commissioner Kernan?
I don't know if fully retractable is really what. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking like, if there's like a little piece that's left out, like what is really fully. But we could also just rely on number 3, which is not be site obscuring. So, it's retractable, movable, but it also can't be site obscuring.
On the site obscuring, Kimberly, this is a question for you, I suppose. Do you mean like the material has to be see-through?
Yes, but also not be obscuring any character defining features. So that sort of also blends with number 4 at the end where it says there's you can't obscure any character defining features. So that's both while it's open.
While it's closed.
Mhm.
What if like the storefront itself is the defining feature? I guess I'm a little bit concerned about like if the
Well,
the windows are
yeah,
private.
and I think, so like, for example, in the New York design guidelines, they specify that when it's closed, the security gate needs to be of a mesh that you can see. So we could get that specific. I did not do that because, well, I don't like to get too specific in code just because you never know what people are gonna propose and then it kind of binds our hands, but that's kind of what they did, so. I mean, we could doing some more research and coming up with some alternative language. I think I understand your intent. We could also do research to see what other jurisdictions do. It's a fine line.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. And I see Commissioner Craven's point that you wouldn't want to make it too specific. So I think I would be in support of some direction to maybe find some language to try to encourage folks to have it be as minimally visual as possible when it's open. I don't know if folks feel the same way.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
Something that we could do is create, because part of our goal is not just to update the code, but also to develop educational material. We can be a lot more specific, I think, in educational material, and then we can also update it and change it a bit more easily than we can in code. So perhaps a way to think about it is to try to be broad yet specific enough in the code, but then really focus on examples and the kind of details that you're talking about, especially visual ones, in that educational material, which I think you'd have a lot more flexibility to share what you're thinking. And then also that's something staff can use when working initially with applicants before the code is adopted to come in and say, so this is the direction we're seeing.
Okay, Commissioner Hans?
So I think that is a good point there, Kimberly. Yeah. The thing I was thinking about is the consistency again. These applications might come 3 years apart, 5 years apart. Joint buildings. And what type of fabric, screen fabric, rolling fabric, it's going to be proposed. I think it might be helpful to have minimum opening size. Because you could have one owner choose a very tight screen, and another one could take 4 or 5 inches in that opening, and they look very different next to each other, serve the same purpose. So maybe a less snap.
I think that's a good idea to have some more information on it, but minimal opening would be a good thing to specify. At least I think that would probably be good in the very minimum, the educational material. I don't know. I'd be willing to hear Dad's idea on whether that would be useful to put in the actual code or not. Yeah, great. Are there any other comments or anything like that? I think I have one more item I'd like to discuss. Commissioner Fuller?
I think similar to, or adding on to Commissioner Hans's notion, if we're talking about aperture size, then potentially also considering width of fencing unit in the first place. If we have X number of aperture sizes, but I've got big blocks of fencing that are this wide or so, it still kind of affects the visual, like section 1, affects the character of the building's period and style and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, if we're getting fine grained like that, like aperture size and material size might be worth looking at.
Yeah, I think that would be another maybe point for the educational materials. That's a great idea. Perfect. Any other comments before I move on to the last thing I mentioned about?
Yeah, I do like the approach of having an illustrated guide, and the example from Portland that looks really, really nice in color. In our printout, it was in black and white, but in color it really comes out nicely, and that is it's just a very well designed gate, and it's not a typical, off the shelf security gate. It's designed for that particular building. It looks really good. So I don't want to see us eliminating the possibility of having some good and creative design features.
Yeah, that actually leads into my next thing I wanted to talk about with the commission is that I did also really, you're talking about the sort of one for the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association on page 21. Yeah, I thought that looked really nice. And it kind of brought to mind whether we would want to have any like decorative elements introduced into these fences so that they're not just sort of like plain mesh. And I don't know if it's practical to add that, which is why I wanted to just say, yeah, this is an idea. You guys have to think about it. Or maybe staff, if you have any, your face looks scared, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it. Commissioner Foley.
I think that if we're going to include notions on decorative elements, it might be good to put some thought together to create kind of a uniformity of appearance. So I think that would be pretty cool. I think it'll take some time and some work on our part to, or excuse me, I'm not gonna get the commissioner at this meeting. He wants to part. But it could be interesting. Yeah. I mean, it would help to because such a, even though it's a relatively short time period of significance for our downtown area, a kind of a small window, we got a great diversity of structures, and a decorative element that is, or a couple of decorative elements that are universal to the district could be a really great way to tie the area together. That seems like a future discussion on a different topic.
Any other thoughts?
So
Commissioner Kwan?
the discussion seems to me, that it's been really evolving. There's also a possibility that the telescope will attract back into the adjacent walls.
Commissioner Shaw?
I think it might be helpful to add compatibility to the design as well. So the materials specify that they need to be compatible, but maybe we want to say the design needs to be compatible as well, so that we have a little bit of leverage over the appearance, and we can also adapt to, the introduction of new styles and new materials as they become available.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually. Do staff see any issues with adding
No, and in fact, I was gonna respond to your question about decorative detail, that there's a way to phrase it. I think I would hesitate. I think that we want to be careful about the use of the word must, right, with decorative details. So like, I think that definitely we could add, staff would look at some language regarding the design being compatible, but we could add, figure out how to add another a standard that would not be a must, but would be an encourage. Because again, everyone, the property owner has different capacity and interests, so. Or we could address it in educational.
educational guide?
Either way.
That makes sense to me. I think it would be nice to at least encourage folks to try to do something more than just like plain mesh, because I think the gate does look actually pretty nice. So if we could get something like that, I think it would end up making the district look a lot better. Just all of the same mesh gate. Okay, great. So I think, are there any other comments or suggestions that folks would like to make? I feel like we're kind of winding down on the discussion here. So maybe what we could do is I'll kind of summarize what we've talked about. And we can just, I guess, do a vote to say like, yeah, that's what we talked about and that's the direction we'd like to go. So let me. Okay, great. So to sort of summarize the discussion, we'd like to direct staff to, I guess first we were pretty okay with the appropriate materials section. We don't really have too many suggestions about that, and we're happy pretty much with that language. On the design section, we would like to add some language talking about in section 4 that the defining features of the resource and the historic districts. We'd like to add a little bit of language tying the whole district together. And we would also like to talk to the Downtown Advisory Board to see what kind of issues they're running with, see if they are okay with the things that we're suggesting for this particular piece of code. And then I think we'd also like to see like an educational brochure with a lot of pictures and examples. Hopefully encouraging folks to choose a more decorative design. So does anybody have anything to add to that? Commissioner Inman?
Yes, adding under design, another item, and that would be the compatibility.
Thank you, yes.
Design
Adding,
compatibility.
yes, exactly. So, and then adding another section that addresses compatibility with the resource and I suppose the district as well.
Yes, and one other thing which is, I guess up at the top would be defining storefront.
And defining storefront.
Defining storefront.
All right. Do the staff have any questions for us about any of those directions?
I just have a clarifying question. Did you want us to craft some language about encouraging architectural detail, or did you want to limit that to the education?
I think maybe we could take a look at some language and then we could discuss it when we get more formal. Does that sound good to folks, or do you want to leave it out?
I don't want to just open the door to a wild and crazy bunch of gates. I mean, it's just kind of want to be unobtrusive.
But I think the corollary to this is that traditionally all coiling security grills are institutional. So if we don't address in some way, and I think the compatibility is going to get us close to that, but the one that was approved earlier is going to be a straight off the shelf coiling security grill. It's going to look like it is used in every shopping mall in the world, you know, so unless it's a mid-century modern aluminum and glass building, I think they're all going to look fairly inappropriate. So I'm hoping that that language covers that.
Commissioner Potts?
So the education material, just wondering, that's a place where you mentioned possible grants there. Toolbox systems, to tie that somehow to the decorative aspect.
Yeah, I think actually this could be a good opportunity. We could work more closely with the urban development staff, which are not, we're all one department, so we could, work, because they're providing money, we can help with education. Makes us a little bit more.
Commissioner Schramm?
I think Kimberly has done a really good job of keeping this open enough that it allows business owners some flexibility and allows us to work with them on it. So I guess I would discourage making anything too specific about how decorative or aperture openings, just because I think we don't wanna do anything that's gonna make it even harder for these folks to run their businesses time.
Okay, so I think, maybe it would be, since we've got a couple of different opinions about adding, the decorative element to the actual code, maybe we could take just a quick vote on that piece in particular, just to see where we are majority wise. Can I suggest a motion? Not allowed? Probably not.
Yeah, well. We're not like approving or denying any applications here, we're not approving any actual code language, so I think what we need to do is we're gonna direct staff, which is Ms. Fitzgerald, to bring back some more language for you to consider, so I think we should just try to be clear about what we'd like her to come back with. It sounds like some of these things that like everyone's in agreement, like add and the surrounding historic district to sub 4, so she'll bring that back. But then I think everybody sort of wants to consider or take another look at some of these things like the decorative or things like that. And so I think we just need to direct her, here's the things we'd like you to give us some options on.
Okay,
So whether we do it with another motion or multiple votes, I think it's just important we make clear what we want to do.
okay, great. So, I guess can we do sort of like an informal vote on that one piece?
If you want to decide about just on the decorative part, whether you
Yeah.
want it in the code or versus in the suggestive material, yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah, then we'll come back to the final motion to direct her to come back to others.
okay, great. So then I think I'll just call for a vote, and if you say aye for this vote, then you would like the decorative element to be, suggested in code. And if you say no, then you would like, that to be just in the educational materials. So all in favor of including some suggested language for the decorative elements in the code, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, I think the majority here is no, so then we'll say that's gonna be in the education material, so that works for me. Okay, great. I think then we've summarized everything. Do you have any more questions for us? Okay, great. So now we do need to do like a motion with some suggestions.
I think technically we have Commissioner Fuller's motion that's out there to adopt a approve and amend, so I think these will all be amendments, so maybe we just summarize what the potential amendments would be.
Okay. Okay, great. So we'll go over, so I guess then we'll go over the amendments, which are going to be to add a section about compatible with the district, and then to add defining teacher of the resource and the historic district. I think those are our specific suggestions for the text. And then we've got some other direction that's kind of outside of that. That doesn't have to do with the text. So should we vote on that here? Or should we have like a separate, like meeting with the downtown?
I think. Why don't we just have the motion for this motion be about what to direct Ms. Fitzgerald to come back with? And then we can, after that, we can give her another directive to talk to the downtown historic folks and
Okay.
other things.
Okay, so we'll do two motions, one to kind of finalize our text direction, and then we'll do another motion for those kind of pieces outside the text. So if we're ready to vote, I will go ahead and call a vote on adding those two pieces that we've summarized. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? All right, it looks like we are all in favor of those changes to the text. And then I'd love just one more motion to have a few more directions from staff about talking to the downtown advisory board and also developing maybe some educational material. Great.
So moved.
Perfect. We've got a motion from Commissioner Strong. Do we have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Inman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we are all in favor of those additional items. Great. Thank you guys so much for a productive discussion. I really appreciate it. Perfect, so that puts us into our next, agenda item, which is action plan updates. Do we have anything, does anybody want to report on anything that they've been working on?
I can say the archaeology, the industry report on this. The season really to report on, I think. It's the season to write the reports that you're going to read.
Great, well, Commissioner Inman and I, we've been working on the criterion schools, so hopefully I'll have my draft part done here pretty quickly. So we're moving forward on that, so that's something exciting that's gonna happen. Is there anybody else who'd like to give an update?
I'm gonna report on Andy's behalf, that even though, so he's home, he's recovering, and he's continued to record radio shows, and in fact, since I was out on leave, because my mom passed, I haven't had time to do my regular history newspaper articles, so he's working on a Salem Reporter article, so he's trying to keep busy. I think he's kind of bored. And so I love it.
I thought he was posting to Instagram too, so I was like, busy guy. Perfect, okay, great, well then with that, I think we'll go ahead and move on to the newsletter. Yes.
Hello, so our December newsletter, which is our winter newsletter, is should go out soon, but I am missing one.
Is that from me?
And this is our printed edition, it'll go out both in print and electronically. And that should be going out right after the holidays. But otherwise, we're good to go. We should start entertaining ideas for the spring newsletter, if anyone has any thoughts on that. Happy to entertain whatever you'd like to do. We could also pose that to new commissioners who will be joining us next month. If we like.
We'll make them write an article. Their welcome present.
That's all I've got. Just as a reminder that the newsletter, the winter newsletter also includes a required mailing to historic homeowners, which is part of the reason that we mail it. So, we're required as part of our CLG to provide a notice of responsibilities for historic homeowners, and we include that in our newsletter. That's all I've got for you.
Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, looks like we are on to agenda item 8, which is the Historic Preservation Officer report.
So the first item I want to talk about is that this is 2 of our commissioners' last meeting. So we have a little something for each of you. And so Jacob is gonna hand out little certificates and a letter from the mayor. So yeah, so Brett and Steve, we're really sad that you're leaving us. And I'm gonna put you on the spot. Each of you can share just a little bit, if you want, about how you felt about serving on the commission, or yeah. And what you're gonna be doing next. So Brett, you wanna go first?
Yeah. So it has been it's been really fascinating to be on this commission. I'm not a resident, have not been a long-term resident of Salem. I've been a resident of Salem for as long as I've been a resident of Oregon, and that's been since January of 2018. I came to the city because it gave me good job prospects as a public historian, because it was in the middle of the valley, let me go wherever I wanted to. And in 2020, I saw an opportunity to jump on a commission, and I didn't have anything else going on. It's basically been laid off the archives, and I just came here and I was so flabbergasted at first with like managing the rules of procedure and getting the whole thing situated. I remember I wore like a suit in the first like video day too, because I had no idea who we were supposed to dress. And it's been so interesting being able to like sink my teeth into this town in a way that I never really had before with a different kind of city. Like I love my city in Texas. San Marcos was beautiful. It was one of a kind, but I was never involved in it and in its future as I was with this one. And it's so fascinating seeing the kind of like reverse Orwellian quote of, you know, controlling the present means controlling the past, means controlling the future, yada yada yada. But it's like it's so true. Seeing this is that like we are a bulwark of memory, of public memory, for this city and for its institutions. And so this has been great. When my life gets less busy, I want to do it again. So yeah, thank you so much.
I just thought about it.
It's all teams, so. that's why I'm- Okay, this isn't. Cozy. I'm very. Directors, it's just probably two images. Because not until that took place, really begin to recognize the gravity of, you know, the opportunity. The involved in some change. It's been a wonderful experience for me, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you to you both. I really appreciate all of the great advice and perspectives you brought to the commission. So we'll really miss you.
You know, you can still volunteer on such a. Right now, I want to introduce our new preservation planner, Jacob Morris, and I'm going to put him on the spot now to share a little bit about where he came from and now like where he's living, and you're going to see a lot more.
Yes, I come here most recently from the state of Missouri. I was with the State Historic Preservation Office there for 5 years, doing various things. And before that, I spent 5 years as the Historic Preservation Officer for a community in Texas, Palestine, Texas. And before that, I worked with the Historic Site System in Texas. I was a historic site administrator for the Eisenhower birthplace up in Denison, Texas. And so, yeah, so over the years, I've been in preservation about 20 years now, which I'm happy about, but also kind of sad that 20 years passes that quickly. I've only been here roughly 2 weeks, and I would like to say that the community has been more welcoming than I had expected. There is a lot of kindness here and a lot of optimism, which is very glad because we moved roughly 2,000 miles. So I'm glad it turned out that way, and I'm happy to work forward with you all to, you know, conserve our historic resources so that they can contribute to the future as well as they have in the past.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming all the way to the West Coast. We're delighted to have you on staff. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Okay, great. Well, I think with that, we're all done, and I will go ahead and adjourn the December 21st, 2023 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmark